Imagine you were once a powerful being standing among the stars, created before the universe itself. Then, one fateful decision condemned you to eternal exile. No second chances. No way back. This is the tragedy of the Watcher Angels, a story that even many believers have never truly heard. Close your eyes and envision the unimaginable. Heavenly beings of pure light and purpose, who walked in the courts of the divine, now cast into darkness so complete that not even the memory of light remains. Their cries for forgiveness echoing through eternity, met only with silence. Their punishment so severe that it serves as a warning to all creation. The Watchers, those ancient angels tasked with observing humanity, committed a sin so grave that it altered the course of human history. The evidence lies scattered throughout ancient texts, hidden in shadows of theological debates, and whispered in the oldest traditions of faith. What you're about to discover is a mystery concealed for millennia, a divine judgment so final, so terrifying, that it shakes the very foundation of what many believe about forgiveness and redemption. This isn't merely an old religious tale. It's a cosmic drama that challenges our understanding of justice, mercy, and the consequences of rebellion. The answer God gave these fallen angels when they pleaded for forgiveness will leave you speechless. It defies our modern sensibilities. It challenges our concepts of second chances. It reveals a side of divine justice rarely discussed in today's houses of worship. Before we begin this journey into the ancient realms where angels fell and giants walked the earth, I invite you to prepare yourself. This story will challenge you. It may disturb you. But most importantly, it will make you question what you thought you knew about divine forgiveness. Welcome to Bible Mysteries, where we explore the forgotten stories that shaped our world. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share so more people can discover these ancient truths that remain relevant even today. Now let us travel back to the days before the Great Flood, when the boundary between heaven and earth was breached by those who should have known better. In the ancient hierarchy of heaven, the Watchers held a special place. These weren't ordinary angels but celestial beings of tremendous power and authority. Their very name, Watchers, or Aaron in the original Aramaic, reveals their divine purpose: to observe, to witness, to keep vigilant watch over God's creation. Described in various ancient texts as holy ones and those who do not sleep, the Watchers possessed knowledge of the cosmos that far surpassed human understanding. They stood in the very presence of the divine, their existence bathed in celestial light, their purpose aligned with the cosmic order established at creation. Led by figures such as Shemhaza and Azazel, these 200 powerful angels were entrusted with the sacred duty of watching over the early human civilizations. They observed from the veil between worlds, witnesses to humanity's first steps, their triumphs and failures, their growth in the image of their Creator. But in the days of Jared, the seventh generation from Adam, something unprecedented occurred. These celestial beings made a decision that would forever alter the course of human history. They abandoned their heavenly estate. They crossed the boundary between spiritual and physical realms. They descended upon Mount Hermon, a massive peak that even today stands over 9,000 feet tall on the border between modern-day Syria and Lebanon. Genesis 6 verse 1-4 records this cosmic transgression in words that have puzzled scholars for millennia. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. This seemingly simple passage hides a profound disruption of divine order. The sons of God, the Watchers, became enamored with human women. They who had witnessed the creation of the physical realm now desired to experience it fully, to indulge in pleasures never intended for them. This unholy union between heaven and earth produced offspring unlike any the world had seen before or since, the Nephilim. Genesis describes them as mighty men which were of old, men of renown. But the book of Enoch reveals a darker truth. They were giants of immense power and wickedness. The Nephilim ravaged the earth, consuming its resources, oppressing humanity, and spreading destruction wherever they went. Their unnatural hunger could never be satisfied, their thirst for dominion never quenched. Ancient traditions speak of these giants standing between 9 and 15 feet tall. Interestingly, throughout the Mediterranean, Middle East, and Americas, archaeological discoveries have uncovered unusually large human remains. At Lovelock Cave in Nevada, red-haired mummies measuring over 8 feet were discovered. In the Catalina Islands off California, a dig in 1913 unearthed skeletons over 9 feet tall. While mainstream archaeology remains skeptical about connecting these findings to biblical Nephilim, these discoveries continue to fuel speculation about humanity's mysterious past. The corruption did not stop at this physical transgression. The Watchers brought with them knowledge, secrets of heaven never intended for human possession. The Book of Enoch meticulously catalogs these forbidden teachings. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them. Shemihaza taught enchantments. Barakijal taught astrology. Kokabel the constellations. Arakiel the signs of the earth. Shamsiel the signs of the sun. And Sariel the course of the moon. This transfer of divine knowledge created a technological and spiritual revolution that corrupted humanity's development. Warfare, sorcery, cosmology, pharmacology, all were introduced before humanity was ready to wield such power responsibly. These accounts don't appear only in the Book of Enoch. The Dead Sea Scrolls contain fragments of the Book of Giants, which elaborates on the Nephilim narrative. The ancient historian Josephus mentioned these events in his Antiquities of the Jews. Even the Babylonian Talmud contains references to these fallen ones and their influence on early human civilization. The world spiraled into chaos. A darkness fell upon the earth unlike anything since creation itself. Violence, bloodshed, and sin spread like a plague, defiling every corner of God's handiwork. What began as an act of rebellion by the Watchers had metastasized into a war against the divine order itself. The Book of Enoch paints a grim picture, and the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin. The sacred harmony established at creation was shattered. Mankind, created in God's image, now bore the corrupted image of these fallen celestial beings. The ancient world became unrecognizable. Blood stained the ground as the Nephilim's hunger drove them to increasingly horrific acts. According to ancient texts, they consumed everything in their path: plants, animals, and eventually, humans themselves. When no more food remained, they turned on each other, creating a cycle of violence that seemed unbreakable. The cries of the innocent rose to the heavens. The earth, once pure and vibrant with life, now bore the scars of unimaginable wickedness. The sins of the fallen angels and their offspring had reached their limit, pushing creation itself to the brink of dissolution. The great archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, looked upon the earth with sorrow and righteous anger. They saw the suffering of humanity, the violence, the destruction. They carried the cries of the oppressed before the throne of God. The Book of Enoch records their petition. And then Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down from heaven and saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all lawlessness being wrought upon the earth. The souls of men make their suit, saying, "Bring our cause before the Most High." This celestial response to earthly corruption has been interpreted differently throughout religious traditions. Jewish scholars like Maimonides later argued that angels were merely metaphorical representations of natural forces or divine communications. Early Christian theologians saw these archangels as God's agents of justice and mercy, acting with divine authority, yet distinct from God himself. Eastern Orthodox tradition holds that these archangels, while grieved by the corruption, maintained their role as intercessors, representing humanity before the divine throne. In Sufi mysticism, these beings represent aspects of divine consciousness responding to imbalance in creation. Despite these varying perspectives, one truth emerges across traditions. The cosmic order had been violated, and divine intervention became inevitable. In his divine justice, God issued his decree. The corruption of the Watchers and their children could no longer be tolerated. Their punishment would be severe, and their dominion over the earth would be shattered forever. The Book of Enoch records God's command to Gabriel: "Proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the children of fornication, and destroy the children of the Watchers from amongst men. Send them one against the other, that they may destroy each other in battle." This divine judgment contained a terrible irony. The Nephilim, who had used their supernatural strength to dominate others, would now turn that strength against each other. Their own power would become the instrument of their destruction. Brother would rise against brother in a cataclysmic war that would eliminate their kind from the face of the earth. Genesis confirms this judgment. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. Yet even in this darkest hour, divine mercy appeared as a counterpoint to divine justice. One man, righteous, faithful, untainted by the corruption around him, found favor in God's eyes. His name was Noah, and through him, God would preserve both humanity and the animal kingdom. Genesis 6:8-9 states simply but profoundly, "But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. The phrase, "perfect in his generations," has been the subject of much theological debate. Some interpret it as referring to Noah's moral character. He remained righteous despite living in an age of unprecedented evil. Others suggest it means his bloodline remained untainted by Nephilim genes, making him genetically perfect among a corrupted population. God gave Noah a command to build an ark, a vessel of salvation for him, his family, and representatives of every animal species. The dimensions were precise, the instructions detailed. This would be no makeshift raft, but an engineering marvel designed to weather the coming catastrophe. Through Noah, humanity would be given another chance. Through this one family, God would restart human civilization after the cleansing waters receded. This pattern of judgment, followed by mercy, destruction followed by new creation, would become a recurring theme in religious understanding, a reminder that divine justice never operates without divine compassion. For the watchers, however, there was no such promise of redemption. As Jude 1:6 later wrote, "And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness, unto the judgment of the great day." The watchers, once mighty and revered, now trembled in despair. Bound by the weight of their rebellion, they faced a punishment unlike any they had ever known. The decree of the Most High had been spoken. They were to be cast into the abyss, held in chains until the final judgment. But in their desperation, they refused to accept their fate. If only they could plead their case. If only they could beg for mercy. If only someone could stand before God on their behalf. Imagine the scene. Shemi Haza, once commander of heaven's legions, now kneels in the dust of earth. His radiance dimmed, his glory faded, his wings, once spanning the heavens, now dragging in the dirt of the world he corrupted. "What have we become?" he whispers to Azazel, whose eyes once held the light of stars, but now reflect only terror. "We who stood before the throne, who sang in the celestial choirs, who witnessed the birth of sons, reduced to this." Azazel, the keeper of divine mysteries, responds with bitter recognition. "We chose this. We saw beauty and desired to possess it. We had wisdom and chose to corrupt it. We knew glory and exchanged it for fleeting pleasure." Their voices, once commanding the elements, now break with emotion as Kokobel speaks. There must be a way back. The All-Merciful cannot have abandoned us completely. We who have existed since before time, can our existence simply end in chains and darkness? The Book of Enoch records their collective anguish. "Then I went and spoke to them all together, and they were all afraid, and fear and trembling seized them. And they asked me to write out for them a petition that they might find forgiveness." In their desperate state, the watchers turned to one man, Enoch, seventh from Adam, a human who walked with God. This choice was both strategic and symbolic. Enoch was no ordinary human. He had cultivated such closeness with the divine that his righteousness was legendary. If anyone could appeal to God's mercy on their behalf, surely it would be him. The Book of Enoch describes their plea. "And they asked me to write out for them a petition that they might find forgiveness, and to take their petition to the Lord in heaven." Consider what this request meant. Celestial beings, created before the foundations of earth, humbling themselves before a mortal. They who had once instructed humanity now begged a human to advocate for them. They who had once stood in God's presence now needed an intermediary to approach the throne they had abandoned. Enoch, righteous yet still human, found himself in an unprecedented position. No human before had been asked to mediate between fallen celestial beings and their Creator. The weight of this cosmic responsibility must have been overwhelming, yet he accepted this impossible task. Enoch's journey to the throne of God transcended physical reality. The ancient text describes a visionary ascent through multiple heavens, each more glorious and terrifying than the last. This was no mere dream, but a transportation of consciousness into realms beyond human comprehension. As Enoch passed through the first heaven, the atmosphere around him transformed. The air became like liquid light, tingling against his skin, filling his lungs with an energy that made his mortal body feel weightless yet substantial in new ways. Sounds became visible, the harmonies of creation manifesting as patterns of color and light that surrounded him like living architecture. The second heaven brought him through realms where angelic beings of pure fire and light moved in perfect geometric patterns, their movements creating a music too complex for earthly instruments. The temperature neither burned nor chilled, but resonated with his very essence. The Book of Enoch attempts to capture this transcendent experience, and the vision was shown to me thus. Behold, in the clouds, a great house built of white marble, and the walls of it were like mosaics of hailstones, and its floor was of crystal, and its ceiling was like the path of the stars and the lightnings. As Enoch approached the divine presence, his human senses struggled to comprehend what he witnessed. Light that was simultaneously blinding, yet revealed everything. Sound that was silence, yet contained all utterance. A presence that was both nowhere and everywhere. Standing at the threshold of divine judgment, Enoch felt the full weight of his mission. Behind him lay the desperate hopes of the fallen watchers. Before him waited the ultimate authority whose law had been broken. The tension of this cosmic moment hung in the balance between justice and mercy, between unchangeable divine nature and the possibility of redemption. Would the petition be heard? Could beings who had witnessed the very face of God and still chosen rebellion ever find forgiveness? Was there a limit to divine mercy, a line that even God's compassion would not cross? The Book of Enoch builds this tension. And from beneath the throne came streams of flaming fire, so that I could not look thereon. And the great glory sat thereon, and his raiment shone more brightly than the sun, and was whiter than any snow. Enoch trembled as he prepared to deliver the watcher's petition. The beings surrounding God's throne fell silent. The cosmos itself seemed to hold its breath. The pivotal moment had arrived, the moment when divine justice would either yield to mercy or stand firm in judgment. As Enoch opened his mouth to speak, the weight of two worlds, heaven and earth, rested upon his words. He who had walked with God now stood before him, about to plead for those who had once walked with God, but chosen to walk away. Enoch stood before the great glory, his mortal frame trembling beneath the overwhelming presence of the Almighty. He had carried the pleas of the fallen angels, their desperate cries for mercy. But as he waited for a response, the heavens grew silent. Then from the throne of God a voice thundered, a decree that would shake the very foundations of the cosmos. The Book of Enoch records this pivotal moment. You have been in heaven, but all the mysteries had not yet been revealed to you, and you knew worthless ones. And in the hardness of your hearts you have made this known to the women, and through these mysteries women and men work much evil on earth. The divine voice continued, each word reverberating through Enoch's being with the weight of ultimate authority. Therefore you shall have no peace. These 5 words, simple yet devastating, sealed the fate of the watchers forever. No deliberation, no hesitation, no compromise. The judgment was absolute, delivered with the finality that only comes from perfect knowledge and perfect justice. The silence that followed was more deafening than the pronouncement itself. In that moment, the hope of the watchers, already dim, was extinguished completely. Their petition, carried by the most righteous man of his generation, had been denied. God's judgment was not arbitrary, but rooted in the very nature of the watchers' transgression. Unlike humans, who were created with limited knowledge and understanding, the watchers had stood in the full glory of heaven. They had witnessed the face of God. They had possessed knowledge of divine mysteries. Their rebellion was not a mistake born of ignorance, but a conscious rejection of what they knew to be right. The Book of Enoch elaborates, "You were formerly spiritual, living the eternal life and immortal for all generations of the world. Therefore I have not appointed wives for you, for as for the spiritual ones of the heaven, in heaven is their dwelling." This was the crux of their sin. They had abandoned their very nature. Created as spiritual beings with a specific purpose in the cosmic order, they had willfully chosen to corrupt that purpose. They had used their heavenly knowledge not to guide humanity, but to corrupt it, teaching arts that led to violence, sorcery, and destruction. God reminded them through Enoch, "Wherefore have you left the high, holy, and eternal heaven, and lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and taken wives unto yourselves, and done like the children of the earth, and begotten giants as your sons?" God's judgment revealed a fundamental distinction between angels and humanity, a distinction that would later be articulated in various theological traditions. Angels, as purely spiritual beings created before humans, possessed a different relationship to divine law and mercy. The Book of Enoch captures this difference. "But you were formerly spiritual, living the eternal life and immortal for all generations of the world. You have been in heaven, but all the mysteries had not yet been revealed to you." This passage suggests that the angels' greater knowledge and proximity to God made their transgression fundamentally different from human sin. They were not deceived. They fully understood what they were doing. The New Testament would later reflect this distinction in Hebrews 2:16. "For surely it is not angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants." This verse suggests that divine redemption was always intended for humanity, not for angels who fell. Unlike humans who could repent and be forgiven, the Watchers had no such path available. Their judgment was final, because their nature and their choice were fundamentally different from those of humanity. This divine refusal to forgive the Watchers has sparked theological debate across millennia. Does this judgment contradict the concept of God's infinite mercy, or does it actually affirm a deeper understanding of divine justice? St. Augustine of Hippo addressed this question in The City of God, suggesting that angels, being pure spirit and having perfect knowledge of God, made their choice with full awareness. Their sin, therefore, was not a mistake, but a perfect rejection of the good they fully knew. Thomas Aquinas later built on this, explaining in his Summa Theologica that angels, lacking physical bodies and sensory experience, make decisions with their entire being. When they choose completely and irrevocably. There is no room for regret or change of heart as there is with humans, whose decisions are influenced by physical passions and limited understanding. Eastern Orthodox theologians have emphasized another aspect, that forgiveness requires repentance, not merely fear of punishment. The Watchers, they argue, sought escape from consequences, not genuine reconciliation with God. Their petition came from fear, not from love or true contrition. Jewish mystical tradition offers yet another perspective, that the Watcher's punishment is not eternal, but endures until the end of this cosmic age, teaching that even divine judgment has its limits in eternity. What emerges across these traditions is not a contradiction of divine mercy, but a deeper understanding of its nature. Mercy operates within justice, not against it. True mercy requires truth, and the truth about the Watchers was clear. They had made their choice with full knowledge and would not truly change. Where does one imprison celestial beings? Where could these once mighty Watchers be held so they would never again corrupt the earth? God had prepared a place for them, a realm of despair, a prison beyond imagination, hidden deep beneath creation itself. The Book of Enoch describes this cosmic prison in haunting detail. "And I saw a deep abyss with columns of heavenly fire, and among them I saw places of darkness without any light and a fire burning, yet without flame, terrible beyond imagination." This abyss, this unholy prison, was no ordinary pit. It existed in a dimension where physical laws, as humans understand them, held no meaning. The darkness there was not merely the absence of light, but an active force that consumed illumination. The silence was not peaceful, but oppressive, broken only by the faint sounds of chains and distant cries. Imagine a void where even time itself feels wrong, stretching moments into eternities, where consciousness cannot escape into the mercy of sleep or the oblivion of death. The very atmosphere presses against the spirit like an ocean of lead, making every thought an effort, every memory a burden. The temperature neither burns nor freezes, but somehow does both simultaneously, creating a sensation of constant, inescapable discomfort. The walls, if they can be called such, seem to pulse with a malevolent awareness, as if the prison itself is a living entity designed to maximize the torment of its inhabitants. For beings who once soared through the cosmos, who once basked in divine light, this confinement represented the ultimate punishment: restriction, isolation, separation from all that gave their existence meaning and purpose. This terrible fate is confirmed not only in the Book of Enoch, but echoed in canonical scripture. The Apostle Peter wrote in 2 Peter 2:4, "For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment." The Greek word used here, Tartarus, is significant. In Greek understanding, Tartarus was not simply the underworld, but the deepest abyss, reserved for the most grievous offenders against divine order. Peter's use of this term communicated to his Greek readers the severity of this punishment. The Book of Enoch elaborates on the nature of their bonds, and I asked regarding all the hollow places, "Why is one separated from the other?" And he answered me and said, "These places have been made to receive the souls of the dead. And such a division has been made for the spirits of those who make their suit, who make disclosures concerning their destruction, when they were slain in the days of the sinners." Jude, the brother of Jesus, also referenced this imprisonment in Jude 1:6. "And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling, these he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day." These texts reveal a consistent understanding across traditions, that the fallen watchers were confined not merely as punishment but as cosmic quarantine, preventing their further corruption of creation until the final judgment. For Azazel, the punishment was even more severe. As the leader who taught humans the arts of war and vanity, his judgment was specialized and particularly harsh. The Book of Enoch details this unique punishment, and again the Lord said to Raphael, "Bind Azza to Raphael, bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him to the darkness, and make an opening in the desert which is in Judea, and cast him therein. And place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light." Unlike the other watchers imprisoned together in the abyss, Azazel was sentenced to solitary confinement. Buried beneath the earth in a remote desert, pinned beneath jagged rocks, his face covered so that not even the faintest glimmer of light could reach him. This isolation within isolation represented a punishment tailored to his particular transgression. He who had led others into rebellion would now lead no one. He who had revealed forbidden knowledge would now know only darkness. He who had gloried in beauty and adornment would now be covered in rough stones. Yet even this terrible imprisonment is not the final chapter in the Watcher's story. Their current punishment, severe as it is, serves as a holding pattern until an even more definitive judgment arrives. Revelation 20:10 describes this ultimate fate. "And the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet had been thrown. They will be tormented day and night forever and ever." While this verse specifically mentions Satan, theological tradition understands that all rebellious spiritual beings will share this final destination. The lake of fire represents not merely physical torment, but complete separation from God's presence, the ultimate consequence for those who chose to separate themselves from divine purpose. This final judgment reveals an important theological principle, that justice delayed is not justice denied. The temporary imprisonment of the watchers is not a reprieve, but a waiting period before the full implementation of cosmic justice at the end of this age. As Jesus himself warned in Matthew 25:41, "Then he will say to those on his left, 'Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels.'" This passage suggests that such a fate was never intended for humans, but was specifically designed for rebellious spiritual beings. The Watchers fell because of pride, a warning that echoes through the centuries to our present day. Their story illustrates what psychologists now call the Icarus effect, named after the Greek myth of Icarus, who flew too close to the sun. When individuals or groups achieve positions of great power or knowledge, they often develop a dangerous sense of invulnerability and exception. Proverbs 16:18 captures this timeless truth. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. The Watchers possessed knowledge, power, and position beyond human comprehension, yet they fell further than any human could fall. Their story serves as a warning that greater privilege brings greater responsibility, not greater license. We see this pattern repeated throughout human history. Kings and emperors who believed themselves divine, only to be overthrown. Business titans who considered themselves untouchable, only to watch their empires crumble. Spiritual leaders who abused their authority, only to be exposed and disgraced. The lesson of the Watchers remains relevant. No position is so exalted that it places one beyond the requirements of righteousness. In our current age, this ancient story takes on new significance as humanity acquires godlike powers through technology. We now possess knowledge and capabilities that previous generations would have considered miraculous or impossible. Genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, nuclear energy, and global communication. The parallel is striking. The Watchers taught humanity technologies they weren't ready for: metallurgy, weaponry, cosmetics, astronomy, knowledge that accelerated human development but also human corruption. Today, we face similar questions about technological boundaries. Just because we can do something, should we? Consider genetic modification. We can now edit the human genome, potentially eliminating diseases, but also opening doors to designer babies and new forms of inequality. Or consider surveillance technology that can protect but also control populations with unprecedented precision. The Watchers crossed a boundary between heaven and earth that was meant to be respected. Their story asks us, what boundaries should remain uncrossed in our pursuit of progress? What knowledge, if misused, could lead not to elevation, but to destruction? 2,000 years after the events described in our story, another teacher stood before crowds and warned, "For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world, yet forfeits his soul?" Jesus' question echoes the fundamental choice the Watchers faced and failed. Throughout history, this pattern of transgressing boundaries for short-term gain but long-term destruction repeats itself. The Roman Empire expanded beyond sustainable limits. Colonial powers extracted resources while destroying indigenous cultures. Industrial revolution brought prosperity alongside pollution. Each example shows humanity making the same fundamental choice: immediate desire over lasting harmony. The ancient Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh contains a flood story similar to Noah's, suggesting this memory of catastrophic judgment is embedded across cultures. The Greek myth of Prometheus, punished for giving fire to humans, parallels the Watchers giving forbidden knowledge. These recurring narratives across civilizations suggest a universal understanding that some boundaries exist for our protection, not our limitation. What makes the Watchers' story unique is its focus on forgiveness denied. Unlike humanity, repeatedly offered paths to redemption throughout sacred texts, the Watchers represent a cautionary tale of choices so fundamental, so informed, that they cannot be unmade. Their story forces us to consider not just the initial choice to transgress, but the point beyond which reconciliation becomes impossible. So the question before you today is not merely, should God have forgiven the fallen angels, but rather, what role are you playing in this ancient narrative that continues to unfold? In your daily choices, in your moments of temptation, in your exercise of whatever authority you possess, are you following the path of the Watchers? Are you using your knowledge, your position, your influence to serve yourself at the expense of others? Are you crossing boundaries that should remain respected? Or are you more like Enoch, the righteous one who walked with God even in a corrupted world, the one who stood between heaven and earth, speaking truth even when that truth was difficult, the one who maintained integrity when all around him had abandoned it? Perhaps the most haunting question this ancient story poses is this: if even celestial beings who stood in God's presence could fall so catastrophically through pride and desire, How vigilant must we be about the condition of our own hearts? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this profound spiritual mystery. Do you believe God's judgment of the watchers was just, or do you think divine mercy should have extended even to them? What parallels do you see between their transgressions and challenges we face in our modern world? If this exploration of biblical mysteries has resonated with you, please take a moment to engage with our community. Share your insights in the comments below. Your perspective might be exactly what another seeker needs to hear. This journey through the forgotten corridors of sacred history is one we take together. Each ancient text, each divine judgment, each cosmic drama holds lessons that can transform our understanding of both heaven and earth. Don't forget to subscribe to Bible Mysteries for more explorations of these hidden truths. Hit the notification bell so you'll know immediately when we release our next investigation into the sacred texts that have shaped our world. Until next time, may you walk in wisdom, recognizing the boundaries that protect rather than limit us, and the divine mercy that remains available to those who seek it with sincere hearts. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of Scripture's most profound and mysterious accounts. This profound story raises questions that echo through eternity. What are your thoughts on God's judgment of the watchers? Can some sins truly be unforgivable? Share your perspective in the comments below. Your insights might illuminate this ancient mystery for others. If you found value in this exploration, please consider subscribing to support our team's ongoing work uncovering biblical mysteries. Hit the notification bell to join us on future journeys through sacred texts. Don't keep these revelations to yourself. Share this video with friends and family seeking deeper spiritual understanding. And if this content resonated with you, a simple like helps others discover these forgotten biblical truths. Until next time, may wisdom guide your path.